Okay, you're very welcome back to Thursday Night's Off the Ball. Later in this hour, we'll be chatting to Cyril Farrell. They've had a few days to digest these shocking events, really. You might describe them as surrounding Galway hurling at Parnell Park last Saturday night. So who better to speak to than the man who led them to their most glorious of times in 80, 87 and 88. Cyril Farrell will give us an insight into how people are feeling in hurling circles in Galway after their elimination from the Liam McCarthy Cup. So we will do that later in this hour. But it's the large ball we're going to focus on now. It is an Ulster final to look forward to this Sunday afternoon. The sellout signs have been up in and around Clonus for a couple of weeks already as Donegal and Cavan take each other on in the Ulster final for the first time in 36 years. There's a really historical feel about this matchup. It's Cavan's first Ulster final in 18 years, so no surprise the hype in that county will be heading into overdrive in the days and hours to come. To join us to talk through that game is Donegal star, ex-Donegal star Brendan Devenney, and a three-time All-Ireland winner with Tyrone, Enda McGinley, lads. Evening.
Hiya, Dave.
Evening, Dave.
Brendan, one can only imagine the hype surrounding this game in Cavan. I know there are a number of players living outside the county, but for those that aren't, it's something that does need to be dealt with, isn't it, by Mickey Graham and his management team? Donegal well used to it. Their seventh final this decade alone. How much of an issue might that be in the build-up to this game?
Well, if you hear from last year, I suppose the surprise final appearance of Fermanagh, and Rory Geller has mentioned that looking back at it now, he found it hard to contain the kind of bit of hysteria that rightly so swept through Fermanagh, and I suppose something similar in many ways. Cavan, people weren't expecting them, to necessarily be in the final. It's 2008 since the last one, and of course 1997 since they last won it. So it's a mad footballing county, and yeah, to keep a cap and all that is a huge job for Mickey Graham. But I think whatever he's brought this year to Cavan, they're a changed team, and in many ways similar to, and they must look across their iconic neighbours in Roscommon. Them and Roscommon both relegated, but both, I think, approached the season in a very astute manner in terms of, right, we're outside of the top teams in this division. Should we go down, we'll learn bits and pieces as the season goes on. If we lose a game, no big deal. What did we do good? What can we improve? Roscommon took that into the championship, took out the big two, won Connacht, and now Cavan on a similar are in a similar vein coming into the Ulster title. Now, again, they're underdogs against Donegal, of course, Donegal with all the experience, but I think what they've learned from themselves, beating Monaghan in the drawing game with Armagh and then beating Armagh, I suppose kicking 23 points the last day, they're going to come in with a lot of confidence, and not the Cavan of old. They'll be a little bit brittle. They seem to have a bit of steel about them, so I think whatever happens, it's set up for a fantastic game.
Yeah, it should be. And you came into a Tyrone panel in 2002 that were reigning Ulster champions at the time. There were guys in the panel that had played in an All-Ireland final just 7 years prior to that, so you had plenty of guys you could kind of tap into, ask for a little bit of advice in terms of how you should be dealing with the big days. There's no one in this Cavan panel that has anything like that experience, bar maybe an under-21 final a few years back where they were hammered in Croke Park against Galway. So it's all on Dermot McCabe and Mickey Graham, isn't it? The two guys that were there in 01 in their last final, that were there in 97 when they last won the game in the Ulster Championship final.
Yeah, absolutely, which is tough for a group to take on. But in fairness, an Ulster final, unfortunately, because of the change in emphasis on provincial championship, an Ulster final isn't quite the high pressure, huge match that it might have been back in the back in the 90s, before the backdoor system came in. I think the main thing that they'll be tapping into is that the past 5 years, these Cavan players have been lauded from their under-21 success. Every time they've put in a good performance, every time they've got promoted to Division 1, everybody says now they're coming of age, now they're really now they're going to stand up and make a go of senior success and translating that under 21 success to senior. And time again they have flattered to deceive and ended up being washed up and written off again. That has happened now from Terry Hyland to Matty McGleanan. It has just happened again and again and again. So them players, that process of ongoing being built up only to be written off again is bound to harden them mentally. And I think Mickey Graham has come in this year. To be honest, I had written them off once and for all. I thought, right, well, that team's time has come and gone. They're not going to come through. And yet here we are. We're at the beginning of something again. I think it's critical for Cavan that they haven't done anything massive yet. Reaching an Ulster final is one thing. They have to now put in a big performance on Sunday, and also if they're beat in the qualifier game or in the Super 8s, if they get there, it can't be a flash in the pan because they've done that before and then went away again. So I think that recurrent defeats, promoted to Division 1, relegated from Division 1 as they were again this year, that is bound to harden that team, that they shouldn't be carried away. But as Brendan would tell you, the backslapping that they'll have received over the past week or two is very, very hard for any team to ward off completely, and that can soften the edge, and that'll be their biggest battle to maintain the steely focus. Brendan mentioned it. I would fully agree that they've exhibited to date. They have had a much, much tougher run than Donegal to this final. They have to maintain that sort of steely focus for taking on Donegal.
Brendan, Mickey Graham has obviously had a massive influence at club level, and now he's brought that into the county as well, and it's been an unbelievable year for him. I was watching Cavan last year under Manny McGlean, and as enthusiastic as Matty was, I never felt they were as tactically aware as they should be. I read this week that Oisin McConville feels they have taken huge strides in their tactical awareness under Mickey Graham. How has that manifested itself in your eyes from what you've seen of them?
Yeah, well, certainly, I suppose Enda certainly got a lot more backslapping than me in his time, and I'm obviously looking on my jealous eyes. But yeah, listen, we all know where the teams, everyone needs to be. You need to be set up astute. Players need to be comfortable in their positions. You're going to drop in 1, 2 sweepers, going to leave 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on what team you are. And then it's a matter of trusting your players to go and play. So I think with Cavan, what you've seen at times, particularly when Monaghan come back 3 points in it, started to turn the screw against them. Cavan would have wilted a few years ago, and you thought, oh, here they go. Monaghan are going to come and win this game, get a draw at worst, and push on. But Cavan stood firm, and you just seen right straight away. There's that wee bit of steel. And I think 3 points down to Armagh in the first game, when you thought, right, that's them out again. Come back, fought back into it. So that bit of confidence to know you're never out of a game. It's very hard to put that in. As Enda was saying, there's been so many knockbacks for these boys. To correct that in a season, you'd have to say unbelievable stuff from Mickey Graham and Dermot McCabe. They're heart and soul. What I love about it too, they're Cavan men. Nobody can respond to anyone like their own county men in a dressing room, no matter what anybody says. You can't take this away. This is all Cavan. So you got to think in the second game then, whenever Cavan seen that Armagh, obviously they ruled their luck early on, them couple of goal chances Armagh had, and that's probably a worry against this Donegal forward line going in. But once they did and they started to pull away, there was no easing up. So you got to think he's corrected so many things around the pitch, but certainly that bit of confidence which must have been lacking from a lot of players, and even on the back of a relegation, as I say, they obviously were talking all the way through the league, which is very important. Learn what we can in the games, learn stuff about yourself, learn how to put things right, because it's all about the championship, as we know, and that's what they've done. They wanted to get the Ulster final. That would have been the big marker, not taking away, of course, they're coming in, obviously they want to win it, but to get into a final was massive. It's going to be massive force for Cavan. Of course, they're going to say, listen, this sees the day when we're there. But certainly, if you ask Mickey Graham at the start of the season what did he want to do, it would have been be in an Ulster final, and that's where they are.
And let's get into matchups and the tactical battle between these two teams and these two sets of management teams. I guess, is there a danger that Mickey Graham will spend a little too much time watching Donegal's win over Tyrone, fearing what they might do, and spend less time on Cavan? Or do Donegal only have one way to play, and we know how they are going to set up? They'll set up the way they did against Tyrone, and it's up to Cavan not to play into their hands the way Tyrone did, avoid those turnovers, avoid getting hit on the break.
Yeah, the tactical side of this match is massive. Mickey Graham has made a habit of always being able to come up with really good plans for opponents. So certainly I think he will look at that Donegal-Tyrone match, but I think he'll also look carefully at that Donegal-Fermanagh match, because for long periods of that game, Donegal could not come away from Fermanagh. They were really stifled by Fermanagh and frustrated by them, and kept to very low scores. The Tyrone game is a really difficult one to interpret, because Tyrone's performance itself was just simply so poor. Patton had 100% of their kickouts. They ghosted through the middle third. Jamie Brennan was practically a loose man. So there's plenty of that he'll learn of what not to do maybe from that Tyrone game. But the Fermanagh game will also give him an inkling that Donegal, like any team, still struggles to break down a blanket defence. Now, we've no sign that Mickey Graham does that, but we've certainly plenty of signs from him that he's very adaptable. Martin O'Reilly got completely shut out of the first game against Armagh. He was switched to wing half back, got one of the crucial scores towards the end of the game. Donegal, on the other hand, have Stephen Rochford now in the backroom team. We know from his time with Mayo, he is more than happy to pull rabbits out of the hat and do things completely unexpected. I think the matchups are going to be absolutely crucial. But again, when looking at the matchups, I suppose for Donegal, for Cavan, you've got McVitie, you've Grode Kiernan, you've Moyna, and you've Marty O'Reilly would be my four that have to be shut down. For Cavan, looking at Donegal, there's many more threats from Ryan McHugh and Owen Ban Gallagher coming from defence, from Michael Murphy around the middle, and from any one of sort of three forwards. Donegal have more threats for Cavan to try and shut down.
So, Brendan, who picks up Garrod McKiernan? Is there somebody outside of Michael Murphy that Donegal will look at to try and get on top of him? And I guess the question that some Cavan fans would have is, if Donegal were to get on top of McKiernan and Darragh McVitie, who's kicked 7 points from play over the 3 games, what else have Cavan got?
Yeah, you coming to me there, Dave?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Sorry, I didn't pick up the start list. Yeah, listen. What else have they got? I suppose they have the magic man, Cian Mackey.
They won't start him though, will they?
They certainly have options. I mean, he's been able to come on and lift them, and we're on about the top teams with impact players and people coming on. Certainly, Donegal have players all over the pitch can score. I mean, literally the whole, from the half-back line up, every one of them can register points, and I think that's the difference with them and Cavan. But in saying that, they kicked 23 points in a game, must give them huge confidence going into the match. So what it's set up is for a magical shootout, and I think after years of Ulster going down and down the pan, like I've went to Clones many a time thinking, God, this is going to be, at worst or at best a mildly interesting game which breaks out. A football match will break out every now and then. I think this is going to be end-to-end pulsating stuff, and I don't think Cavan have any real fear of Donegal. They're going to take them on. I think, as I was saying previously, both teams will drop on a sweeper by and large, but it'll be attack, because Cavan can't just change a mantra and go like a Fermanagh. It's not their style, and as we've seen with teams like Fermanagh, it's not going to win you a match. It might keep you tight in the first half. So I think from what Cavan are going to do, going to play a bit like Donegal, it's going to be about how you get up front and outscoring the team, which, thank be to God, is the mantra for most of the teams now that are playing, and most of the teams are succeeding.
In Brendan's opinion on that, it echoes what Marty Clark was saying. He was writing for the BBC today, and he thinks it will be a shootout as well. And I want both Brendan and Marty to be right on that. I'm at the game, I want to see a spectacle, but I don't see how that might happen if Cavan are spooked by the way Donegal set up against Tyrone and opt to mirror what they're doing. And maybe, having seen how easily Tyrone kicked the ball away and basically stuck it in on top of Hugh McFadden, who was playing that role brilliantly close to the Donegal goal, that maybe Cavan will be reluctant to put the foot on the ball as often as they have been against Monaghan and the 2 games against Armagh, and will have 2 sets of players hand passing the ball across the respective 45s.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Brandon's just been a cute Donegal man, but I think if this game is played as a shootout with Jamie Brennan, Paddy McBrearty, Kieran Thompson, Michael Murphy, take your pick off the bench, you have Niall O'Donnell, you have Langan, you have Oisín Gallen. Donegal have the firepower that if this is a shootout, there's only one winner. I can't, if I'm Mickey Graham coming into this, yes, it'd be lovely to stick to my attacking principles. But my money would be naive. I don't think Cavan have the firepower to deal with Donegal. Yes, they scored 23 out of 26 shots. Was it again Armagh? Phenomenal shooting. But teams know, any mature team know, they can't rely on that sort of shooting every day of the week. And you just look at Donegal against Tyrone. Donegal punched holes, got into the lead and then went defensive. So even though they're all out attacking, they were defensive, and then they ripped Tyrone apart by being defensive, having a bit of a lead and pushing on ahead. So Mickey Graham, I would imagine, knows that in the likes of McVitie, he has a player on top form, probably one of the form players of Ulster at the minute. He'll be very difficult for Donegal to match, but outside of him and the likes of O'Reilly, yes, they've Mackey coming off the bench, but they don't have the same number of natural shooters from Donegal. So if I'm a Cavan person, yes, the romantic, okay, there's an Ulster final, let's go at that. I think teams will be more mature than I think Mickey Graham will demand that his team is more tactically astute than that. I think he's likely to go after Patton's kick out. Patton got a really easy day against Tyrone. I know Tyrone were trying to push up, but they didn't commit to that, and they ended up giving really easy kickouts, and Donegal built from that. I think Cavan will know that they either gift him an easy one close in, or they will push up much harder and try to put much more pressure on the Donegal kick out and not gift them the same amount of possession. So with that end of it, he might be positive, but I think plenty of times you'll see multiple Cavan men dropping back and then looking to burst out. They've brilliant men at bursting out, the likes of Moyna, the likes of Faulkner, the likes of Killian Clark, great men for bombing up the pitch. So I think plenty of times Cavan will drop back, but they'll pick their moments like any modern team should, particularly on kickouts occasionally, that to push up and try and put the pressure back on Donegal.
And if that is the case, Brendan, they have to be brave and retain the link man in between midfield and the half-forward line, don't they? So that it isn't just 60 metres of space between the man who's turned Donegal over and Darragh McVitie and whoever's alongside him inside, that they do have, whether it's a Martin O'Reilly or a Keane Mackey who's played that role when he's come in off the bench, that whoever it is stays put, holds their position. Otherwise, there's open prairies for Donegal to basically avoid having to defend at all, because Cavan will just be entrenched in their own half of the field.
Yeah, listen, guys, I don't expect this to be GA Gold, catch and kick and see what happens up the pitch, launch her as far as you can. And Enda here is in the conservative side of things, in the Tyrone mantra, defend first. Listen, if they want to play like that, you're going to see a repeat of the Ulster final last year, where Fermanagh sat and didn't score a point from play to 30 minutes into the game. Donegal mirrored them. Who's going to win? Now, you might say you're naive for going for the game, but I say, what is the point in sitting and trying to change your philosophy in a game that Donegal will change theirs, and it still comes down to who's the best shooters? Now, if you have a go at scoring, that means that you can alter the scoreboard in a game by a lot more than playing defensive. If you're playing defensive, the most you can get on a run is 2-3 points. If you go at a team, you could hit 1-4, 1-5. You could see what Roscommon did in the second half in Galway when they went at them the last day. You can shake a team up, and that's the difference, and that's what I think the mindset is changing now. Sure, listen, teams are going to sweep. There's going to be times where the ball is slowed down, but when you inject that pace, you've got to commit men forward, and you've got to go for that match. And fair enough, you might say Donegal have more shooters, are better at that. Donegal are also really good at defending, and any team is, if they've got 14 or 15 players inside the 45. The key is when you attack, you got to go for the other team, and if Cavan err on the side of caution, they'll get picked off anyway. So to me, I think, listen, fortune favours the brave. You've got to go for the game, and that's the key to it. And if anything, if I'm looking at this game in the second half, and let's say Donegal do get into a lead, they do what they did against Tyrone, which is very dangerous, which is sitting on a lead, and you look at that shot of Cassidy's that fizzed over the bar. Tyrone could have snatched a draw out of that game, and everybody's talking how better Donegal were than. Hey, Tyrone nearly got a draw. So listen, Donegal got to learn from that. If they're in a lead and they sit back and invite Cavan on, we've seen Cavan come back this year already. We know they're not afraid to have a go. So I think that's an interesting dynamic in the game. Should Donegal be in a lead in the second half, how do they play out the last 10 or 15 minutes?
What about Michael Murphy? And the debate has been diluted somewhat as to whether he's been used correctly by various Donegal management teams, given how well resourced they are inside now with Jamie Brennan and a fully fit again Patrick McBrearty and Owen Bawn and Ryan and Owen McHugh all bombing forward and contributing scores, that he actually seems perfectly placed now just to have his influence all over the field, that roving role. He was absolutely brilliant against Tyrone. What do Cavan do with him? How do you curb his influence in the game? Because I think if he has a big game, Donegal win, don't they?
Yeah, and it's while Colin O'Rourke is sort of questioned that he hasn't stood up in big games. I think anybody, for me, I've seen him often, and he always has a massive influence, even if he doesn't do the eye-catching things. And I think this is why Donegal people who see him week in, week out, even if he doesn't do the eye-catching things and score 0-7, 0-8, 0-9, he still is the complete control of that Donegal team. He makes them tick. He's their leader. He puts in massive hits. He puts in massive pressure on the referee. He knows how to lean on the referee. He draws plenty of frees. Michael Murphy knows all aspects of the game, but his ability to just control the pace of the game and his smarts, like against Tyrone, one of the cleverest things, Tyrone had multiple men back. Donegal were going through the phases. Michael Murphy just drifted to full forward. Everybody else cleared out, and they just put the ball in on top of him. He won it at his ease and stuck it over the bar, and he's there. Whenever he gets a score, it's one of them scores. It's like Canavan in the old days for Tyrone. It's worth 2 for Tyrone. It's worth 2 for Donegal, the lift he gives them. So have Cavan somebody. I don't think they're going to put McKiernan directly on him. I think that would be Cavan sort of killing themselves and going after Murphy. I think Tyrone has shown in the past, if you just completely try to negate Murphy, the likes of what Justin McMahon done, it can work and it can frustrate him. Even in them games he came through with the winning scores. So he's not somebody that you go out to completely nullify or that you spend a huge amount of time on, because there's only a certain amount of benefit you're going to get from that. You're never going to keep him completely quiet.
Is it a case that
you're probably doing it at the expense of everything else?
Cavan have to get their hands on the ball, and the more ball they have and the more the better they distribute the ball, well, then the less he's going to be in the game.
Absolutely, and it's more where he's going to be passing the ball to. You have to be really tight on Brennan, who came out round against Tyrone and was given way too much space. McBrearty obviously has been fairly quiet in the games to date, and that would be a fear that he's going to catch into a bit of life. So it's the men surrounding him. Ryan McHugh does massive damage on the loop, and again really clever. So there is no point going paying too much attention to Murphy. You have to be aware of him. You have to give a man to do as well as he can on him. And but the nature of his game, it's like a Kieran Kilkenny for Dublin. It's exceptionally hard to negate. He just gets his hands on so much ball. He's so composed on it. He's got such strength that you almost, it's a waste of energy trying to tackle the man. So you just have to limit everything else and the runners off him.
Brendan, I'll give you the final word in a moment, but Enda, for a Cavan victory on Sunday, and all that would bring, the 22 years waiting for the Anglo-Cell Cup to go back to the Breffni County and all of that, what has to happen for Cavan to end up walking up those steps in Clonus and lifting that trophy?
I think it's very possible. Like Donegal aren't world beaters. They were in Division 2 and they didn't exactly just waltz out of Division 2 either. So now they were under strength during that campaign, but they're not absolute world beaters. I really like them as a team, have done for a number of years, but let's face facts. Fermanagh offered a fairly limited threat in the first round. Tyrone were really off colour in the semi-final. So Donegal are in the Ulster final without having played any team that's really on edge at the level and the game and at a performance level that you're expecting. Cavan have come over Monaghan. They have beat Armagh after a replay. They're, for me, a team that is much more likely to be at the peak pace of championship, whereas Donegal are probably still getting there. Donegal haven't been really tested in a really open game because Tyrone just unfortunately didn't mount that challenge. So Cavan have to really get into Donegal's faces, make it really horrible out there in the pitch for them. I think if I was Cavan, I'd be keeping it a wee bit tight early, because I would fear when Donegal hit an early lead, they're the masters of killing the game after that. And whilst Brendan says Tyrone came back at them, Tyrone were never going to win that game. So I think Cavan have to keep it tight. And in reference to the Fermanagh performances against Donegal this year and last year, where they kept it tight but never offered much by way of going on ahead and winning the game, Cavan are better than that. So Cavan can strike a wee bit more of a balance, but their intensity, their aggression, and then their sharp shooting whenever they get the chances, which they've shown to be excellent, needs to be on point. If they do them things, they do have a real chance. But I just fancy Donegal because across the field I think they've a wee bit more quality.
Okay, brilliant. And I'm sure you fancy Donegal as well to win this game, Brendan. But in terms of the teams that we had in the pecking order behind Dublin, the teams that we thought might be in a position to challenge them this year, we've seen Galway, Mayo and Tyrone all beaten provincially and all having to go back to square one and try and replot their way through the championship summer. We haven't seen enough of Kerry yet, the other main contender, to really form a rounded opinion on them. We might get more insight on that Saturday night. Donegal are the only side that maybe people had up there as a possible contender that have yet to let us down. Is there a chance we could be let down by them on Sunday, or are they too good with too many options and a really good management team in Bonner and Stephen Rochford that they're actually going to lay down another marker this Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, listen, Dave, I agree with Enda. Donegal came through the league, played so in a lot of games. The return of the King, Michael Murphy, was a change in that, and there's just nobody like him in the country. He makes this Donegal team tick from inside out, and I just think all over the pitch they had a brilliant performance against Tyrone, which is a launch pad. People are questioning then how good were Tyrone, where were they at? Donegal bossed the game and should have won it by a lot more. I know that late goal chance masked over the level of how much they were ahead of Tyrone. But yeah, so all of a sudden Donegal obviously come from Division 2. You've got to say that everybody's looking in the championship. Kerry after that there, who was going to challenge Dublin? You're looking at Tyrone, obviously very close again, final last year, Mayo, Galway. After that you probably put Monaghan and Donegal together. Now Donegal have jumped way up the table because of the performance of three of them. So what's to be got out of this game? I think no matter what happens, people are not going to see this as a launch pad they challenge with Dublin because of Cavan, because of they're still a common team. Right out the pitches. We've seen the last day, from Gallagher was a bit shaky early on. So if he's cool at the back, Faulkner, Clark, McLaughlin, if they can hold Donegal scoreless from goals, Murray holds his nerve, kicks his frees. Up front, as the boys got to pull in with McVitie, Pearson, McKiernan, these boys got to chip in. For Donegal, there's some guys in the background there that aren't talked about. The likes of Langan, McGee, that are putting in massive shifts for Donegal and can score from play as well. And Jamie Brennan's performance the last day in the first half was just unbelievable. Sure, everybody's waiting for Patrick McBurdy to catch form. So we're looking at Donegal shaping up. Will we learn enough for the big Dublin challenge from this game? I'm not so sure, but I'm certainly hoping that Cavan bring it and make it a pulsating match. And I think we should probably just look at it as what it's for. It's an Ulster final. It's going to be a fantastic occasion. The Dubs will be down the line later on, and hopefully these two teams, I think, bring something. And obviously one will be in the Super 8. I hope whoever loses gets in as well, because I think they'll bring something to the competition, because there's certainly an evolution coming from Cavan, and I think how they've played this year has been good for football. Yeah,
the colour in St Tierna's Park on Sunday is going to be a joy to behold. Let's hope the weather holds up as well and plays its part of the bargain. Enda McGinley and Brendan Devenney, thanks a million for your time tonight, lads. So I think both of them just about edging for Donegal in what could be a pulsating game. Coming up, we're going to switch to hurling. We're going to chat to Cyril Farrell on Galway.